All right, welcome back to the program. My guest is here with me, Professor Ken Ife, the lead consultant in private sector development to ECOWAS Commission. He's also the co-chair of EU Africa Business Task Force Summit Group. Welcome, Prof, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You know, it seems, I think this is the second time Nigerians are beating their drums that our own Dr. Okonjo-Iweala is now the DG, you know. I think the first time it was about a few weeks ago, like 2-3 weeks ago, it was on all social media platforms that, oh, she's now the DG. Meanwhile, she was one of the finalists, 2 finalists, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala and her South Korean counterpart. Just a few days ago, too, was it not on Wednesday or so, Nigerians also went to this, oh, she has become the DG and all of that. Can you just quickly explain the process, you know, by which the appointment of the WTO DG comes, you know, from the process to the final, so that people can understand this thing, not when you just see something, you just retweet or you say she is. We need to understand the processes and perhaps the language to use.
Yeah, there is an iterative process prescribed by the rules, WTO rules. And it's a 3-stage process which culminated in, you know, initially you had lots of people contending, and then they whittled down to 2. And just a few days ago was the 3rd of that series, where they have now, Okonjo-Iweala got 2/3 of majority. And normally, that is where the case should have rested. All that would have done was just for them to now say, all right, you know, she's the favorite candidate. She has by far the biggest vote. We now adopt her as a consensus candidate. And then it now moves to, you know, they can then announce it that. But the strange thing that happened was that, you know, reminiscent of what happened in Africa Development Bank, again, you know, we had America, Trump's America.
Why did you make that difference? Trump's America.
But they're entitled to feel the way they felt. But the thing is, it raises a fundamental, in fact, it actually makes it easier, because WTO is an organization formed on multilateralism, which means we want a multilateral approach to increase trade and liberalize trade. But Trump has his own approach, which is America first, and tends to prefer bilateral way of doing things. So there's a sharp contrast now. So people can now see the sharp contrast between what WTO stands for, and that will be resolved on the 9th of November, and we hope it gets resolved in the right direction.
Do you think it may not be resolved? Now, do you have fears that it may not be resolved, bearing in mind that U.S. election is on Tuesday, just about 4 days away? We saw the statement, of course, from the U.S. Trade representative. That's actually put a stain, because we were all expecting that announcement on Wednesday, since she has the support of almost, you know, many members or many member countries.
Under the rules, under the existing and subsisting rules, there isn't a scope for America to scuttle the process, because America doesn't have a veto power. No member state has a veto power. It's 1 vote per member state. And what hasn't happened before is that they have not exceeded this stage before. The Constitution, the rules provide for the final arbiter, which is the Governing Council, when they're going to meet in 6th of November. And that is where they are going to, you know, put a seal on that, because they will not invent a new process they're going to put a new rule in the process. So we hope that it's going to be. What may happen is if Trump wins the election, then he has a few days to try and say postpone or not postpone or whatever. But the decision will have to be, I doubt if members are going to agree to postpone, because it's only one country out of 164 countries. Yeah. Now, the second thing, that if Biden wins, well, he might even send a signal before that 6th, you know, just, you know, business as usual. Yeah, before the 9th, he could send a signal, and that ends the matter. Or they may say, okay, wait a minute, how long are you going to wait for him to put in a new trade secretary? No, I doubt if WTO will have to wait or extend, because he wouldn't have had enough time to put in a new person or do that. So in all probability, it looks likely that by 9th of November, there will just be a simple vote, and the law provides for majority, simple majority, but she has an overwhelming 2/3 majority, which is incontrovertible.
So the South Korean woman, Yoo Young-hee, perhaps at this point, even though with subtly U.S.'s support, because in that statement they didn't even mention Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, but they said that the job the South Korean woman would do better because she comes with skills and she's done reforms. She's a trade expert for many years.
No, that doesn't hold water, to be honest, because Okonjo-Iweala has a balanced, broad, interdisciplinary experience, which WTO needs. First of all, she has been a finance minister, and we know that in the area of trade policy, 60% or more of what we do, I've been involved in, well, I'm among the 5 that wrote the Nigerian trade policy in 2012. The over 60% of what goes on there, even the execution of it, is still down to the Ministry of Finance. The trade minister will lead in formulating the policy, but where is the fiscal policy is the main thing in trade policy. It is the tax, and she is also involved in negotiating our common external tariff, ECOWAS common external tariff. And you couldn't say that she doesn't have the experience. Then there's also a frontline experience that she has, which is the fact that she heads or chairs the Gavi, the vaccine. Global. Because the issue there is one of the fundamental issues about the WTO is trade dispute and then arbitrariness in the sanctions and all of that. We want to make sure that if vaccines are produced that are relevant to the COVID that we are experiencing now, that member states or states that have those vaccines should not preclude or shut out other countries from benefiting from that. You saw what happened during the onset of the COVID. Some countries, India, all these some Asian countries, banned their export of some of their products. Active pharmaceutical ingredients. All of those, they were banning. Even the American president was screaming at India on making sure that they play. So some of those are matters for trade WTO to look at. So I think she's got that experience, and she's been canvassing that this is something that could hurt the war. That it should be such that it promotes liberalization of trade and not allow the many other weaker countries to suffer unduly.
She's also said that the WTO needs reform right now. She's known to be a reformist with also those skills she's bringing on board. The question also is...
but there's also negotiating skills. This is more to do with negotiation. It's not just about writing trade policy. It's about negotiating between countries. And that's what she's experienced. She's very rich experience in that period of World Bank. And when she was leading World Bank, she has a lot of experience in that. But also, don't forget, as Minister for Economy in Nigeria, she was supervising all the other ministries, including trade, investment, and industry. They were reporting to her. So it's not that, it's not coming from the blues. She's very, very well experienced and very erudite scholar.
And perhaps she also has that clout. Well, what will politics do in all of this? The intrigues, the politics, then the economics of it. The intrigues, what we're seeing right now, the politics, what we're also seeing, the U.S. is trying to wield the SPA as the biggest economy, and when they talk, other people try to listen. Then the economics part of it, or the political part of it, is also that she became a U.S. citizen in 2019 also. The economics part of it is she's first and foremost an African economy vis-a-vis other economies, and how much of Africa's development are we looking forward to if or when, not if, when she becomes the DG? Okay,
well, on the political side, I mean, it's ironical that an American citizen is being rejected by an American president, but
perhaps they are not looking at her as American enough.
Well, and they don't forget that she contested for the president of World Bank,
yes.
and she wasn't. She didn't have a
We also saw the politics of it.
Now let's look at the African dimension. In particular Nigeria. How do we stand to benefit? Many ways. First of all, the trade facilitation agreement. Most of us have all signed that trade facilitation agreement, but that is not to say that we are all ready to go. There are still substantive capacity, institutional capacity, technical capacity, and organizational capacity that need to be built to enable all these countries that signed up to WTO trade agreement to be able to benefit from the agreement. So we need more help in that direction. And of course, resources are dwindling. Then secondly, bear in mind that most of these bilateral and multilateral and plurilateral trade agreements are actually subset of WTO agreements. They will not be allowed to run into conflict with the World Trade Agreement. For example, America AGOA, which has allowed African countries to bring in without duty, without quota, over 6,500 items. Over 25 years, not much traction. Many of us have not benefited simply because the capacity to actually trade with them is diminished, and so there's got to be something there. Then you look at the likes of economic partnership agreement between, because that's where trade issues are going to come. You look at that economic partnership agreement, you find that
that's from Europe,
from EU.
Yeah,
you find that Nigeria didn't sign.
Yes,
of
that
all
has
that.
been a long time.
That's true. It hasn't signed, and they had reasons not to sign. And part of the reason is really what happens, although the industries, all the macroeconomic modeling were showing that we were going to be worse off in terms of industrial development. But having said that, there are real concerns on trade, the trade dispute resolution mechanism within the agreement. Because what it says is, if you have costs to embark on trade countermeasures, or in fact, you have to take your complaint to the committee. And that committee, you are just one out of 15 countries. And then you got the European counterparts in the meeting. So whilst the measure is the violation and infractions that are hurting your economy, you have to wait until you get a decision that supports the trade defense mechanism you want to invoke. And so Nigeria wasn't happy with that. And then, it's something that you have to look into. There are also other issues like cumulation that can only be allowed at intra-regional level, but that is on rule of origin, but not on inter. So now that we have moved into collapsing into a regional Africa free trade area, that issue would have to be reviewed again anyway. But having said that, the major thing that all of us are going to be looking forward to is this. In many of the agreements, we have been focusing on goods, trading goods.
How about
we need to
services?
do more on trading services because there's education. We are playing in ICT, in creative and cultural industries, in health.
There's a technology part of every sector now.
Absolutely.
Health tech, agri-tech.
Yeah, and then even in transportation services, aviation services, maritime services, cabotage, and there are many things where we need to have more traction in those areas. So she's going to come out handy in helping us to get into that. And that negotiation also has to take place in Africa. In Africa, continental free trade area. The service side, the modes and all that, they have to also come into all that. And being there will give a helping hand to, to our African brothers as we try to deliver on that.
But, okay, Prof, just hold on a bit. Do you also see that she may be caught in the middle of, okay, I'm an African, I'm a Nigerian, caught in the politics of it, that some of my actions may be taken, the other way around, that I'm an African or I'm a Nigerian. No. So she has to be,
not at
she
all,
has to be fair.
No. WTO is not run like many other institutions. It's run by consensus. So you can put things on the table it still has to go by consensus. In the end of the, even when we are doing the trade facilitation agreement, I was taking part in when we are getting the text, we were all making contribution, analyzing, sitting with officers and to do that. But you send it in, eventually it has to come by consensus. So that is one different type of organization. So nobody will accuse her for doing anything. It's not like a unilateral decision, do this change. No, it doesn't work like that. It still has to go. But the thing is that for your voice to be heard is a very important issue. But I'll tell you two things around what we have just discussed. In services, intellectual property right protection is very critical in services. Because if you see Donald Trump attacking China, intellectual property rights is at the heart of it.
Yeah.
Where he says that $300 billion is lost every year from the violation of their intellectual property of American businesses. And then, of course, the stealing of their trade secrets. So that is a very key aspect. Of course, he has more. He has more issues in his hand, which is trade deficit. You know, I don't know how much the WTO can do on trade deficit, but the third one, which is security, and America has the widest definition of national security than any country in the world, because they see national security in terms of economic security, environmental security,
Political
health security,
yeah.
agricultural security, food security. It sees all that in relation to all of that. So when they picked on Huawei with their technology, they are saying, look, the intelligence community in US have been advising subsequent American presidents that there is a collusion between, they haven't proved it, but there's a collusion between Huawei and China government that confers espionage advantage over America. So for that reason, that they won't take it, you know, they just have to fight. And then, you know, don't want their technology because they believe they don't even have the technology to be able to validate that technology. So it's better to keep it away. So what can you do? But these are some of the things that WTO will have to come to terms with. Then the second point is this. The dispute resolution mechanism, America says, the WTO dispute resolution mechanism, America says is very slow. And I think it's true. Because, you know, when countries complain and then they lodge their complaint, the process is not swift enough. It takes years. And meanwhile, if a country is hurting, then what they now have to do is what Donald Trump did to revert to their legislation and then invoke those safeguard measures.
But why is this so? Because that's why a lot of people have been saying that the WTO has no teeth anymore. That is not relevant anymore, especially with the rise in China. And I want you to also answer to that. The WTO's role in international trade anymore is of no significance for the 25-year-old body, if it's still relevant, because we've seen, you know, the WTO coming, it's a bit, or trade, international trade now being a bit politicized. Trump brought in that isolationist posture to it. And you're also seeing the likes of the kinds of policies that Trump is putting in the US with other countries too. You also have like a Trump in Italy now. You have like a Trump in some other countries right now. So you're seeing that. So how do you think that the WTO will be able to navigate that?
No, WTO stands for expanding global trade. And for you to do that, you have to stop countries or try to discourage countries from having arbitrariness in their trade relationship. In other words, close the border, you know, embargo this, embargo that, impose, you know, tariff. WTO is moving towards a tariff-free world to expand trade by opening up and liberalizing trade. That is what it stands for. And WTO has helped the economies of the world to grow to the extent. Because what you would have been having is a continuation of trade wars between countries. And that doesn't promote growth. It decelerates growth. And you can see that now with what is going on between China and America. You know, the people are paying more taxes. The average tax being paid by the household is above $800 or something like that. So it is resulting in higher tax in the end of the day for the households. So nobody wants that. So the only way, but the thing is, what I agree with you is that the consensus approach is what drags the whole matter. You know, when you wait until you get consensus from everybody, rather than where you get an overwhelming majority of 2/3 or something like that. So that's probably one of the reasons why it takes so long. But anyway, I'm sure that Ngozi and her team will be able to get around this.
How do you think they should be able to handle the two elephants in the room? The rising China and
again,
the US, perhaps now, just about 4 days to the election, if President Trump wins, she will have to, you know, handle a Trump's America. If Biden wins, VP Biden also. So how do you think that the WTO, with Okonjo-Iweala's leadership, perhaps because of our analysis and the Governing Council meeting on November 9, consensus and all, how do you think she will be able to handle the two elephants in the room? The two countries, two biggest economies?
Well, the thing is, we have to work for more peaceful negotiation. And then, of course, you have to understand where America is coming from. For you to go and invest in China under the existing law, you have to have a co-investor from China. And then America now says that because they are forced into that partnership, they have access to their trade secrets, they have access to their patents, and then they take it and then modify and do that and do that. So that's one thing. Should this continue? Is there a way out of that? You remember Nigeria, we got hot in 1980, around 1980, when we said, there was a time we said you can't have 100% ownership of a company in Nigeria. All the American IT companies left the country. And at that particular point, we had Chinese, we have over 500 Indian science teachers in Nigeria teaching in schools there. They also had to leave, and because foreign exchange was drying up. But the funny thing is that the same companies that all left Nigeria also went to China, where there was a policy over the 20 years before of training 250,000 science and computer teachers. You know, so
that's in China.
That was that. And now saw what then happened.
China has
over
that
$8
policy.
billion of software export from China. So that was transformational. So this kind of thing should be addressed. And of course, the dispute resolution mechanism and how you can speed these things up so that people who are hurting. But of course, they can also build more, support more plurilateral and bilaterals under the auspices of WTO, which is what we are doing, which is what we are doing with AGOA, which is what we are doing with EU, which is what we are trying to do within Africa. So all of those would encourage some subsets of these agreements, to see how much tension it could remove from the system.
Prof, let's talk about our own issues of Nigeria's trade policy. What exactly is wrong?
Yeah, that's funny. And it's one of her challenges as well, trade policy reviews. Many countries are not keeping up to date with that, and Nigeria is just a culprit. Under their rules, we're supposed to be doing trade policy review every 5 years. The last one that was done by Nigeria was in 2002. Now, we didn't do it until 2012, when 5 of us, led by Professor Olajide and Kwanasi and Oguntola, Professor, even Dr. Ken Ikoha, and Professor Arimu. Jonathan Arimu. I wrote the trade facilitation policy, the side of it. So we all worked together in 2012 and developed the policy, robust policy, and it was given to Aganga, the minister then, to take to the Federal Executive Council, and whatever he did with it, I don't know. And he never saw the light of day. But it was such a tragedy. And from 2002 till now, 2020, we still 18 years, we haven't got trade policy.
So are we a serious
And that's not
country,
fair,
really?
because people that are trading with you are not sure what your policy is.
So what do you think the Minister of Trade and Investment should be doing at this point? Because, I was in Lagos, I think it was in March, and we had a program I was invited to talk about some of those issues. And I'm really surprised that things like this can be happening. There's a minister at the helm of affairs. I don't know if the president knows about this, that your country needs a review trade policy. And you're saying you are trading with other countries. You are in African Continental Free Trade Area. The trade is changing because of the pandemic. And really, you don't think there's an issue, Prof?
Yeah, let me even tell you one, because ECOWAS had worked out a regional trade policy. And it couldn't take off just because Nigeria didn't play ball, and we didn't have our own trade policy at the same time. So you could see how that had affected the regional trade policy that would have made a difference. The regional trade policy wasn't a requirement for the EPA, EU EPA agreement, but the CET was. The CET was done and dusted quickly to enable them to sign the economic partnership agreement.
Why do you think that governments, since the course of 2002 till now, haven't found it necessary and important for the country to have a review trade policy? It's really shameful that I've been speaking about this. It's shameful, you know, since 2002 till now.
It's unbelievable.
It's not just even about Buhari's administration.
No, it's gone on. It's gone on from 2002. But the thing is, of course, there are other things that are in that conduit. For example, the implementation of national single window and implementation of regional single window. Because we have not delivered our own national single window, many African countries, West Africa, they've all done theirs over 10 years now. Because we have not done our national single window, it's difficult for them. They can't implement regional single window, even though most of them are already to implement. So, you know, there is a lot of laxity in the system. But people are responsible for this. For
this, isn't it? The laxity, is it that about leadership? Or is it that we don't have the competence to do that? You are in a group of other professors. No, but we wrote one in 2012. So what exactly is the problem?
We wrote one and DFID supported it. Put a lot of money to support the process. It was delivered.
So it's sitting on one shelf or so?
Yeah, gathering dust. No.
I think there's a proverb in my place that says, let me say the way this, what I'm just, that's, you know, it's like, bad news, you'll be laughing about it, and it's not a laughing matter. We are saying, okay, let's push our own Okonjo-Iweala, let's push our own Okonjo-Iweala as the WTO DG. Yet our country, we don't have a trade policy. Are we a serious country? I think those at the helm of affairs should take note of this. Anyway, moving ahead, Prof, if you take a look at how the pandemic has changed trade, because the pandemic has indeed changed trade. You talked about it, of course, in the heat of the lockdown, we saw what happened. India, Bangladesh, all those big manufacturing companies, even China hoarded its own at a bit, but now started producing for the rest of the world, even face masks and all of that. Yes. How do you see, or to what extent has the pandemic changed trade? And how should Nigeria position itself? I don't know if I should bring Nigeria into all of this, because Nigeria is not even positioned now to take advantage of it.
We are.
Are we?
We are. Actually, why? You know, remember in 2016 when we had the meltdown, one of the unpopular measures that was taken was central bank that decided to delist 43 items from forex eligibility. That didn't ban, but it says, I'm not going to give you foreign exchange for that.
Let's produce it
now,
here.
And then, apart from doing that, you now vigorously use intervention fund to focus on agriculture, and particularly rice, as you saw that. So we have now moved to a position where we are approaching self-sufficiency in rice production, as well as the 10 presidential value chains, agricultural value chains. Now, the question is this: if that measure was not taken in 2017, where would we have been in April, May, where these exporters of rice shut down? We would have been seeing starvation in our country. So, to that extent, we are moving. Now, we also seen 100 billion naira being put into pharmaceutical. We were at a point where they stopped sending virtually all the factories, pharmaceutical factories in Nigeria require active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, being imported. And a lot of it come from India, come from some other, but they shut them down. So which means our industries here couldn't even produce the medicine for our country. But now, more resources are going into that to ensure that we build the capacity to even export active pharmaceutical ingredients, not alone import. So, and then approach self-sufficiency. So we are switching resources to those areas where we have seen the weaknesses. So it's not a case of do nothing. Something is being done on the agricultural front. In fact, bioeconomy, as you now know, we are putting with digital economy in the center stage of our development planning.
But Prof, aren't you seeing that those are things that are happening in silos? Shouldn't there be a coordinated and a holistic approach or efforts? All our efforts should be coordinated and holistic.
No, that's what we are doing on the mission, on the development agenda I've just mentioned.
2050?
Yes, 2021 to 2025. Don't forget that I'm the national coordinator for digital economy, bioeconomy, science, technology, and innovation. And all we have done is to take the experience that we have learned over the last few months and make sure we don't have a repeat. So push these three right into the center of development planning and look for funding mechanisms to ensure that a knowledge transfer partnership between industry, academia, research and development, and government can move together and build and take products to the market. Now that hasn't been happening before because we have innovation that is sitting there but no resources to make it happen. But now that has changed.
Prof, what
that means our young people are going to be right at the heart of our development policy right now, as well as biotechnology.
Prof, what I'm asking is that I know there's a development agenda 2050, what you also mentioned, 2021, I think it's 2025. What I'm asking specifically is that apart even from the development agenda, are we seeing that holistic and coordinated efforts or inputs from even other ministries?
Yeah.
We just talked about we don't have an active trade policy. So what can you do without that? Because whatever you want to do, let's say the trade policy can inhibit one or two things that you may have achieved. There's an after continent. That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
so
I'll deal with that.
Yeah, so it's not about silos. It's not about who is doing this.
The Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning is driving this process of bioeconomy by bringing together all the agencies involved: agriculture, science and technology, bioenergy, that's NNPC, the environment people, and then biopharmaceutical, biomedical, bringing them all together so that you have governance, you have policy alignments, you have coordination, and that is different. They've been operating in silos up until now. They've all been operating in silos, and without the fund and the mechanism to have knowledge transfer partnership involving private sector. And that's what happens. That's what is affecting our education system as well, the quality of graduates being produced. All that is changing in this new arrangement, in this new dispensation.
As we'll come to the end of the program, as we also come closer to November 9th, what should we expect? Especially for Dr. Okonjo-Iweala.
I don't expect any surprises, to be honest, because she's the best candidate. She has the most votes. She's the most experienced. And she has everything going for her. She represents the definition of WTO, which is multilateralism. Unfortunately, Donald Trump, which is himself, has his own agenda, which is based on a bilateral relationship between, I mean, he's a superpower, we all know that, but life has to go on. We're talking about the whole world. It's 164 countries, or 8 countries, I think.
164.
So, so life has to go on.
Okay, what will be the implication if President Trump wins the U.S. election on Tuesday? Not for WTO, perhaps for Nigeria.
If he wins the election?
Yes, if he wins the election.
First of all, it's not going to stop. His winning the election will not stop Okonjo-Iweala from becoming the WTO DG. All right? So it's not going to stop that. Just as it didn't stop Africa Development Bank from doing what needs to be done and then putting our man there. But what we know is that Africa will have a huge sigh of relief when this lady goes into that. I mean, you could see that South Africa even recognizes her. She's a force.
Part of the
she is a force for good.
For
Economic
global Advisory Council.
Yeah, absolutely. She represents the best that Africa can aspire to, and she's going to get a chance. Unfortunately, if Trump doesn't find it comfortable, I'm sorry.
Okay.
He can't change the rules.
Finally, what does this also say for Nigerians moving forward? You know, she exemplifies that excellence.
It's a matter of pride. It's a matter of pride for Nigerians. I mean, we have people, trailblazers. We have Chief Emeka Anyoko at the Commonwealth. We've had her as World Bank. We have addition in the ADF. It's really good for this country that we are producing stars that are of international standards and pedigree that are doing us proud. So we'll keep dancing to that music. and hope that many more people will learn from this,
and
will be inspired by this.
Inspired. And the country should give us like a level playing field whereby other people can also come up the processes.
Yeah, and we have to congratulate, we have to thank the Mr. President.
Yeah.
Mr. President and the Minister of Finance and the Minister for Foreign Affairs for the way they have fought to put this woman there.
Okay.
And then also the way they have also supported addition as well. So it's really good for us to have a president that, you know, throws his weight behind it.
Okay. I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, so I've been speaking with Professor Ken Ife, who is the lead consultant on private sector development to the ECOWAS Commission. You've also heard from him that Prof is part of the people developing, is it the Development Agenda 2050? Is there anything that happens, Prof? You and your people. All right, that's the much we can take. Have a happy weekend, everyone. I am Nancy Nnaji. Be the best you can be and be that change you want to see by now. Thank you for watching our video. Please hit the subscribe button below, turn on post notification to follow all our updates.